Me, Tammy, and it is Kathy. Hey there, everybody. So thank you so much for being here with us here at our Facebook Live. That's traditionally every Tuesday, 2 o'clock Central Time. So thank you for being here. 2 and 2. That's like, do you remember that old
dating show back from 2 and 2?
Back in 2 and 2, right?
That's right.
So this is not a dating show today, even though Tammy does need a date. It's not a dating show. But what we are going to talk about today is we're still on the topic of Dementia 101. So we're referring to this as Act 1 because we kind of, we love the theater kind of vibe. So this is Act 1. So understanding the basics of dementia, we're not going to get too deep and too technical and give big words. We're just going to give you that basic stuff that you really need to understand.
That's right.
So, Kathy, what is our topic today?
Well, so today we're going to talk about symptoms that you should not miss. I don't know which side of you I'm on, so you can just refer to me as everywhere, all around you. We're going to talk about symptoms that, you should keep an eye out for. I think that oftentimes symptoms can get very, very confusing for people. And oftentimes even so much as is it normal aging versus something I should be really concerned about? So Absolutely. I think we're going to hit on some meat in something here in regards to symptoms. We're going to hit on the way in which people act in their daily lives and how we might see a change that might indicate that there's actually a problem.
Yes.
Because that's, I think, one of the biggest things we need to consider. Is this how someone has always been? Because if that's how they've always been, then it isn't an indication of something wrong.
Exactly. So that's interesting because you talk about changes, a change for them.
Right. So for them.
For them.
For everybody. And the change has to be something where we actually see it's impacting their ability to have a quality life. And that's, I think, always a distinguishing factor when it comes down to considering, is the quirkiness I have about myself a problem? Right. It's a problem when it affects your daily living. And that's what we're going to talk about. 3 things that I think everybody should be looking for in regards to that.
Awesome.
So the first one we're going to talk about is something is near and dear to my heart, something I always saw when I was working in memory care units. And that was one of the first signs wasn't necessarily memory in regards to remembering people's faces or names. It was math. People seem to have a much harder time managing money. And I saw this over and over again, and you see it in a lot of different ways, right? You'll see a checkbook that looks pretty sloppy, or someone who was always very fastidious with keeping track of that has now dropped off. That's dropped away. Or we're starting to see a lot of overdraft fees and, notices from the bank and this kind of thing. Someone who used to be really, really savvy about what they spent and how much they spent, they're now kind of careless about that. And again, that's a change from what they always were, because all of those things I just mentioned is how I am on a daily basis. Okay, so that would not be indicated as a change for me.
Right. So I can't add 2 and 2. My understanding is 2 and 2 equals 5, but somebody said it's actually 4. So that kind of changed for me. Like if my kids saw that my bank account or my checkbook was a mess, they would know, okay, there's nothing wrong with her.
In fact,
this is normal mom.
Perfect.
This is perfect.
Exactly.
Now, I wouldn't, if my math skills get better,
then we should really be concerned.
Right.
Something's really, it's like a phenomenon going on. So math and managing money is a really, really good indicator, especially if it's different from what you're used to seeing in them. And be aware, we're going to hit this on every single one of these topics, be aware of the, I'm going to use the word, the excuses that people give as to why things are looking a little sloppy. Right. Be mindful of what those are.
Yeah. And, they may sound like excuses to you without having the background knowledge that this might be a symptom of dementia. Right. And what it just might be, the words and the phrases that they're using are actually ways to compensate.
Yes.
For losing some of those abilities. And definitely if I was someone that was a math whiz and now I can't keep my checkbook in line, I would be embarrassed by that, right? I'd be totally embarrassed. So for me, who cares about money? Who cares about
Right.
there's things online that, so there would be all these things that we could say that person might say to compensate for what they're embarrassing or what they're feeling.
Right.
Because they're not even sure what's going on yet.
Such a great point. And again, to add on to what you're saying, when someone is using those
Compensatory.
Okay, thank you. Those types of phrases, consider always in the back of your mind, take the perspective, is this person operating from a place of shame? Because if they are, the worst thing you can do is dive in that with them and expose that. Yeah. People want to protect their integrity. They want to protect their self-respect. And so when we act like when we compensate, right, we're doing it because we're protecting ourselves. And so that's an incredibly important thing for everybody to be able to live in. But as that outside person, be mindful of that when you're approaching the subject. Be gentle.
Well, and none of us want to look like we're stupid, do we?
Exactly.
And when it comes to things like, the checkbook, the bank account, things of that nature, why are you not paying your taxes? Why are you not paying these bills? What have you? Nobody wants to ever look stupid. So, when those statements come about, it's a way for us to really kind of say, hey, I'm really not stupid. It's a way to really kind of take that shame away from that situation.
Right. I think what we see compensation, and then from an outsider's perspective, we might see blame, which then is going to cause defensiveness. And those three components are going to get you nowhere fast.
Oh my gosh, say that again. So we've
got compensation from the person who might have some dementia or some memory issues going on. Then we've got blame coming from an outsider. Why aren't you doing this? Why don't you take care of this? And what that's going to cause is defensiveness.
Yes. That's
right?
Beautiful. It's a nice little sandwich.
We love those sandwiches. And that sandwich, I think, is something we can use for all of this, because the second thing I think we like to talk about a lot, this is very near and dear to our hearts, is driving. Driving is another big change we might see that could be an indication. Now, again, none of these things we're listing today are an absolute, okay, Dad stopped driving, therefore he has dementia. No, you need to be observing, step back, take a look, see if this matches a pattern where some things are changing. But driving is another one where we see a change, especially if someone is starting to show some signs of a form of dementia.
And I like that you use the word pattern. I think that's an important thing for all of these things. All the things that we're mentioning today is there's starting to be a pattern of mom not being able to handle her bills. Is there a pattern with driving? So as you might start to see these small fender benders happening, or, maybe it was a fender bender, but they're saying, that lamp post in the grocery store, somebody put that stupid post there, it could be all sorts of things like that might be that person really compensating. So the more you're starting to see this, the more look at those patterns. That's a really important thing.
Yes. And again, with the driving, I mean, there's so much that goes on with the front end of driving, but we have to consider the back end of driving too. If somebody was very fastidious about keeping their car maintenance up, keeping their car clean, keeping the tank full of gas, making sure they got their oil changes, parking in the same spot. And then all of a sudden we start to see patterns of that deteriorate. Right. Just again, look back. Is this a pattern? Is it a one-off? We've all had those one-off days, right?
Yeah, that's a great thing. My dad was the one that he made sure that every single car had the oil changed. He made sure the tires were rotated. He made sure that any little bell or whistle happened, he was, on top of checking through that. So I love that idea. I love looking at what the pattern is now in regards to driving and what's changing. Is someone stopping driving? Are they not going to familiar places? So those are things that you need to start, just jot down in a notebook and see what's happening.
Because I think great point. I think that's one of the things we often miss is we look back and go, oh, if I had just known, if I had just take a calendar, take a planner, and just every night, if you're starting to see something, write those notes down so that when you do go to the doctor, you've got something that will help you remember.
Yes.
It's been 3 months. I've seen this. Dad got lost in the car 4 times in his own neighborhood. These are the types of things.
You kind of need that arsenal when you go see the doctor. So write all those things down when you're starting to see them. Just jot them down someplace that they're safe, so that when you do have that appointment, that you can say, okay, 5 times, over the past month, this is what has happened.
Right.
I'm starting to see that this is happening. So I think it's really important to keep those notes.
Right.
So that's really good.
Yeah, and the third one is one that you brought up so beautifully, which is a withdrawal from socialization.
Yeah.
And I think you said this before. Again, this is really important because if this person you're caring for or loving has always been an introvert, in bed at 8 o'clock at night,
right.
then maybe we don't see a change. But notice if there is a change for sure.
Right. Yeah, if your loved one was going to church and was a volunteer and had, maybe played cards or went out for trivia night or any of those things with friends, and all of a sudden you start to see that all of these things are going away,
yes,
then it's really important for us to really look at what's going on, because what that is indicating to me. So if somebody is starting to change their social habits, that's a good word. So if they're starting to change, what that indicates to me is a couple things. It indicates that they may have already had a situation with their friends where they have been made a fool, for lack of a better term, where they forgot something and somebody corrected them. And, I used to see this a lot with family members. They would talk about, mom used to play bridge all the time, but now she can't put I don't play bridge. But there's certain combinations that go together with bridge, right? So they would say, we're starting to see she's no longer going to bridge. And we found out that she can no longer put those combinations together to make whatever it is you do in bridge.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking of building a bridge, but you're playing God. So, looking at those things, and once we're made a fool often because we've forgotten something, are we really likely to go out and do it again?
No.
Mm-hmm. So I look at it like that. So there might be something that's happened already, and they're like, you know what? I don't wish for that to happen again, so I'm not going ever again.
Right.
And I think sometimes the other thing that couples all of this is depression.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting with what you said is that, when we talk often about dementia and different forms of dementia, when language starts to deteriorate due to any one of these forms of dementia, the emotion that we're left with still sticks with us. And so like you're talking about, if a woman is to go to bridge and fumbles with the cards and can't do it and gets funny looks from her neighbors and her friends that she's been friends with all of her life,
right?
In 2 weeks, is she going to remember the exact experience that she had at bridge, or is she going to remember the emotion that she had, which was, it was embarrassing, that didn't feel good? I can't put it into words, but it didn't feel good, and I'm going to avoid those situations.
It was no longer fun,
Exactly.
And I think there's a blog that you've put together that's going to be coming out tomorrow in regards to this. And I think there was something like, I don't like those people anymore. They're mean, or they're stinky. I just made stinky up.
Yeah.
She didn't put that in the blog, but but maybe that's you're hearing things like that. I don't like them. They're not good people. Maybe it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with the changes that are going on with your loved one.
And again, that's those compensation statements that we might be hearing. Just look at them, take them in, don't go back at it. Well, no, that's not true, because now it's the blame, and then it's the defensiveness, and it's that cycle that we won't want to get into. So just take a step back, become Sherlock Holmes, become a very vigilant observer, and start writing the things down that you're seeing, especially if you start to have concerns. So again, to recap what the 3 things are, because we feel like these are kind of meaty ones that you can really kind of hold on to and observe from afar and take a look at. It's managing money and specifically numbers, your simple math. It's driving, changes in driving, changing in driving habits, changing in how you manage your car, getting lost in a car, those type of things. And then finally, it's that withdraw from socialization.
Absolutely. I just noticed that we have a couple of people watching us right now.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them is Allison. She's always here pretty much.
We
every
love
week.
Allison. She's our hero.
She wears a crown and a halo. I just found out just the other day. But one of the things that she does is she often, wherever she's at, whatever team she's with, she brings them into whatever we're watching. So if anybody's watching with Allison, hi, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
That's right.
The other person that is joining us, also that is watching us, her name is Karen. Karen is awesome. We actually met up with Karen in Canada. That's where she lives. And
she's written a beautiful book about her mother.
She has, absolutely. And she still is the caregiver to her mom. So Karen, if you have any comments, we're talking about some of those unknown symptoms or things that are overlooked that are symptoms. If you have any ideas or thoughts about that, we'd love to hear what you say.
Yes.
Additionally, Karen, we want you on this show.
Yes,
so we'll
we
be talking later.
Oh, great idea. Yeah. And Karen, as we're talking about, what we're saying is, before someone's getting a diagnosis, before we've even gone to a neurologist, are there things that we're starting to see? Are there things we should be looking for if we have concerns? And again, those things were, I'm sure you know this, Karen, the changes in a person based on who they were and who they are now. Because as Tammy and I both talked, maybe before you jumped on, math is not our strong suit. So if you see us fail at math at 85, don't even bat an eye.
Right,
That's
exactly. Don't worry about that.
Right, exactly. But for socialization, for Tammy, I think that would be a huge change that I would see for you. That would be something very dramatic as a change that I could see in you. Definitely unusual behavior. Yeah, I'd love to hear more of what you mean about that, Karen. What kind of unusual behavior did you see that was different in your mom? I'd love for you to throw that into the comments.
Yeah,
there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think sometimes we even see things like, giving of money that someone never would give money away, and in lots of it. I think there's all sorts of unusual behavior that we can come up with.
Right.
That's very, and I would say, and the caveat with the unusual behavior is if this person did it all the time, then it's not unusual for them.
Exactly. And I'd like to just add one more thing. This was something I've been thinking about. We work with a support group, and there is a woman who talks often of her husband. He walks around the block. I would not consider that wandering. But I know that that's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and a lot of people say that's an early symptom we see wandering. My question to you, Tammy, is it that they've always been a walker, and that this is something they're still trying to pursue, and we need to provide them with a safe space to do it? Or are they walking because they're getting lost?
That's interesting.
Those are the two things I'm thinking about.
Okay,
so what is Karen saying to us here?
She has a lot to say. So Karen's mom was an RN, so she was a nurse, and her mom was diagnosed when her son was very young. So her mom wasn't even able to mix her son's formula, and they started to learn. She didn't even realize that she could not read the instruction.
Wow.
So I think that's interesting. So there's a movie and a book out called Still Alice, and there's something in that's very similar to what Karen is saying in this. And part of the story talks about a woman, and she's making a cake, I think is what she's doing. She's making a cake. And it's something that she does all the time. And instead of, like, we know we have an egg, we crack it, open it up, put the egg in. But when she did it, she didn't know what to do with that egg and ended up putting the whole entire egg shell and all into that mix. So it's things like that.
Yes, it's like forgetting how to put together that recipe that you've made for 45 years in the back of your mind. Yes, the giving of money, excellent. Yes, but I mean, that's that recipe. That specifically that example you're giving is a recipe that they talk about was like a family generation passed down,
right.
And so she didn't even need a cookbook for that. And that's, I think, one of the children might have noticed that this kind of turned out a little funny. Like, Mom, you always make this every Sunday.
Right.
Why all of a sudden is this so strange? There's the change that we're talking about.
Absolutely. I would say that, I'm not a great person in the kitchen. So that might be a common thing for me to do.
Eggshells in your cookies from Tammy. Don't bat an eye. Expect the unexpected from Tammy. She probably put it in there to see if you caught it.
Right.
That's right. So know your person. That's what's really, that's the key right here is know your person. And Karen is saying, I knew right away, this is not my mother.
Good job. Good job.
Something's not going on. Something's going on that's off.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So when my hair turns a normal color,
that's
when you guys should be worried. That's when
she gives up on the purple, we all need to go running for the hills. That's right.
I didn't even know what Alzheimer's was, and I thought it was menopause.
Wow. Again, this is a great reason why to start keeping a journal. You know, as a woman, I keep track of my period. You know, I want to track what's going on. I'm sorry, full disclosure. Yeah, that's me. I know. Full disclosure. I'm vulnerable. I mean, but for any health condition, if you've got something, and having a period is a health condition, but you know, if you have something going on, tracking it in a diary like that is going to give whoever you take that information to so much more to go off of.
Well, and I think it gives you some insight too, because, you know, I think when we start, and you might be able to get to that insight quicker, the more notes you take, because sometimes we're like, we see it and we throw it away, right?
Yes.
You know, whatever. She's just getting old, that kind of thing, right? But I think the more we look at these things and just jot them down and jot down a date, you know, February 13th, 2018, she did this. You know, and just because then you might be able to come to conclusions a little bit quicker if you're more proactive in writing these things down.
Absolutely.
I know it's difficult to do, but I think it's an important way to get us to getting someone the help that they need quicker.
Right. I just think that's such a great point that she made about thinking it was menopause.
Yeah.
Women not even thinking at 57, you know, that something could be really going wrong here. And she made the most likely conclusion. This is probably menopause, but again, great information. I'm so glad she was able to share with us.
Absolutely.
She'll be a great guest. She will. It'll be awesome.
Okay, so we talked about three symptoms that tend to be overlooked. So that is, happens to be changes in your social habits. Is that person that was very social and going out not doing that anymore? Changes in understanding money. So someone that was really good at keeping really detailed notes and organization in regards to money. Are they no longer able to do that, right?
Exactly.
And then what was the third one, Kathy? Remind me about that.
Driving.
Oh, yeah.
Changes in driving, how you're driving, your safety of driving, your courteousness to others who are driving.
Wait
small
a second,
little
hold
accidents.
Let's say that one again, because I think I'm not very courteous to others.
No, again, know your person. If this is how you are at 50 and 40, then don't assume that there's anything really wrong. But changes in driving, getting lost in familiar areas, small minor accidents, you know, lapses in keeping up with the car maintenance, if that's something you always did before, those types of things.
I love it.
Right.
Karen she just threw out a really great nugget. Some people just make excuses for the odd behavior. That's correct. Mm-hmm. Just go and take the mini mental exam.
Yes.
You know, and the other thing that you can do, the Alzheimer's Foundation does memory screenings.
Yes.
So it's not a test, it's just a screen. So it's just like you might go get checked for skin cancer, right?
Right.
So it's a screen. And go get this screen. You can call the AFA. Someone in your area will be able to do that screen. And that screen is going to give you a lot of information. And once you do that screen, then you've got some paper to also take again to the doctor with you.
Exactly.
That's another great, to get that mini mental, go get a screen from the AFA. Those are great things to do to start moving that process along. Right.
And as always, I think we both need to we want to hit this one on the head because this is our shtick here. You know, it's all about approach. It's all about approach. If you know that the older person in your life is you're starting to see changes and they're throwing out compensatory phrases, thank you, you know, be generous, be kind, be gentle, make your partner look good. This is one of our biggest things. And if you're going to do the mini mental exam, you can print it offline. You know, maybe don't sit down and like bang it out in one shot, but maybe work the questions into conversation. Always work to try to make that partner look good. They are struggling with something you can't even imagine,
Right.
and they're trying to retain their dignity. So please help them to do that. Try to reduce the blame. That's what I encourage.
Absolutely. Well, we have taken up a lot of your time today, and I hope this information was really good for you. Make sure to stop by dementiaraw.com. You'll see some information. All of this is going into a page on there. It's going to be referred to as Act 1. So if you are also not on our newsletter, why don't you let me know? I'll get you on our newsletter because you'll be able to get all this information again in regards to Act 1 as well.
Oh, and I have one more thing to say. Next week.
I have one more too. What?
Good. Next week, we'll be filming from San Diego.
Yes,
because we're presenting with the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, their Concepts in Care Tour. And we will be in San Diego. So if you know anybody in the San Diego area, would love to go to a free conference on Tuesday of next week, we will be there. We will greet them, have them come to our table.
We'll even hug them because that's who we are.
That's what Tammy is. She
and
is.
The last thing that I want to tell you, our book there's a digital version online on our website. You can get this book. Tomorrow, we're having a 1-day sale for that book where it's going to be 99 cents. Yes, that book. Yes. So if you want to grab that for 99 cents, you can do it all day tomorrow. So awesome.
See, I'm halfway through it, even though we wrote it.
You know what?
I love when I quote us.
Right, exactly. So I want to thank Allison and Karen and Bonnie, all of you for hanging out with us. And we will see you next week from San Diego.
That's right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.